Punk rock show. Do Cool. All right, we're recording. Welcome to the final project for this electronic illustration sessions. We have made it, and it's time to put everything that we've been learning and discovering into practice to be able to create a comic book cover and spread. That's going to be this final project. Here is a previous example that I did uh, for a previous run of this electronic illustration. And tonight we're going to be looking at what makes a good comic cover. We're going to be looking at what makes for a good comic spread as well. We're going to look at some examples and I'm going to go over what you need to do. This does have a mock-up at the end to be able to display your stuff nicely, but we'll take a closer look at each one of these. The original idea that I had here when I did this, I think maybe a year ago, was the full solar eclipse was taking place, weird on the ground. And so this is going to be the weird shadows, and the idea was that these girls were sitting around having a picnic and hanging out, and then all of a sudden, one of them, while they're playing with like a Ouija board or something like that, and it starts having a really strange reaction to the eclipse. And because of that, suddenly she starts rising off the ground. There is a meteorite that comes forth from the moon, some kind of weird energy beam strikes her, and suddenly, we've turned the page to be able to find out what the aftermath of that is going to be. And within this, we can see good narrative storytelling happening with these illustrations. So that's something that we've been talking a whole lot about throughout this semester is how to be able to tell a strong story with your drawings. And this really puts it to the test for the pacing and the overall compositions. We've been talking a lot about that, about line work, about shape design, bringing it all together here to be able to make a really, really compelling story and thinking about the pacing within the audience. So when we look at this spread here, right? Most people are going to start by looking up at the top left-hand side and reading it just like any other comic book page, right? From left to right. And so we're doing some special things with the word boxes as well as the frames to intentionally lead the viewer's eye down that page on the left-hand side and then up to the top right as they transition over, and then it reads down again. We've got an initial sort of establishing shot of the two different actions that are taking place within the scene. So we've got her sort of looking up with a real close up at first, and then we see the other girls just starting to sort of start to notice what the heck is going on. In the next shot, she is fully risen above the tree. The girls are standing back and they're totally freaking out, like, what the heck is going on? And then suddenly, the explosion happens, and we've got some cool things happening here with the layout of the page, where the frames are being placed at. And you can see that line of light that's breaking down straight through the far panel on the right-hand side and then entering into the bottom right-hand panel for the explosion is working pretty good to draw the viewer's eye over to the right-hand side and down to the bottom where I want them to look at. Yeah, that's the plan. Mm. Like I said, the videos for this are already online, so you can see me go through all the various steps for this particular project. But just like everything else within here, we're going to start with the sketches, and we want to have good, well-developed sketches. And this one does have line work on it. So then I go back and refine all the line work. I begin the color blocking phase for this. You can see the line work has got good line weight to it. And then we're going to go into the first pass of the shading and then the final pass on there. All right. Let's talk about the cover briefly. Yeah. Well, I think the cover maybe has a little bit better steps here. Yeah. So with the cover, I think that's the line art for it. Moving into the flat shading. Then from there, This is a two pass on the shading, so I've got one other secondary color for the entire thing, and then just one highlight throughout the piece. Instead of using blacks, I want it to be kind of a weird sort of off summer day. So instead of using blacks, I'm using grayish purple for most of the shadows. And you can see how well that grayish purple works when you are shading white. So I think a lot of times you guys, if you're just starting with this, will and you're shading something white, will think, well, white needs to be gray. You can add a tone to that, and usually it'll look a lot better. So by using sort of this grayish purple, we're getting a better tone on the whites within the shot than we would have otherwise gotten. And then finally, going back and adding some final effects to this thing. I think you can see, yeah. Please, while you're making this, do not forget about the logo for your comic. Go down here. Yeah, man. Your comic title, you can add a subtitle to it if you'd like. The maker of the comic, if you want to. So made by your own made-up comic company, and then a barcode as well to that front. But on the inside, you don't really need anything. You've got enough other cats that you're juggling. So let's talk about some more stuff for this project. Now, for this, you guys do not have to do, wait, before I say anything else, please do not use established characters that have already been our existing IPs and have copyrights on them. That means do not do a Deadpool comic, do not do a Captain America comic, do not do a One Piece comic. It needs to be an original creation. The reason for this is that if you try and use Captain America for this student example and you don't draw Captain America all that well, then when people look at and possibly search on the internet and find this example project from you, they're going to say, oh, well, that's like the worst drawn Captain America I've ever seen. And there's just so much to compare it to that that's come before that it can hurt your portfolio. When people look at this, if you decide to use Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck or something like that, and Donald Duck isn't drawn accurately, then you are going to, people are going to know that. They know instinctively what those characters look like, and if it's not drawn correctly. One time I had a student use Winnie the Pooh, and it was the saddest Pooh Bear I'd ever seen in this scene, and it really kind of hurt the overall composition and concept for what they were going for, because when you look at it, you're like, is that who I think it's not quite them, and it just trust me, don't use an existing IP. That said, if you've got an original character that you've been using for quite some time, this is a great time for you to go in and update that character and make it the new best version of it that it can possibly be. Next things I want you guys to know for the style of this project, you do not have to use a Marvel or a DC or a manga or an anime look to these pages and these panels at all. If you want to turn around and do something that looks like this, I am totally okay with that. You are welcome to express and find yourself in any way that you would, just as long as that it's got a cover and it's got a sequential art on the inside of it. So a comic-esque layout is going to be the most important part. Now, mind you, even with The Great Outdoors, written by Julie Falco and illustrated by Ruth Chan, Ruth Chan's lovely illustrations here, even though they are very simplistic characters, we have still got accurate perspective that's going on with the door and the bag that's on the ground. There is still a unified sense of style going on with these characters. And yes, the line work is a little bit shaky and a little bit rough, but it's consistent throughout. Also, the color choices and color schemes that they've chosen are cohesive and match for this children's book type aesthetic with the watercolor on the door and on the ground. You've also got accurate shadows going on behind the door as well. So even if you decide to do something stylized, that is no excuse not to still follow the rules good rules and principles of design, and to still have nice, refined artwork. I hope that makes sense for you guys. Okay, now let's start looking at some cover art. These were my reference images for the previous project. Cool. Let's go into. We'll talk about this later when I show you guys the example that I'm going to be doing for this run of this project. So, good cover art versus bad cover art. Here we are. This is the first spectacular issue of Captain America, illustrated by Rob Liefeld and his inability to draw feet. I think at this point that saying that is it's worn out, but he's had some infamous renderings of Captain America and other comic book heroes throughout his career. Now, this picture, let's imagine for a second and keep in mind that we're doing an original IP that no one has ever heard of before. No one is familiar with Captain America, as hard as that is to believe. So this is your college character that you've come up with, and you're being tasked with creating a cover illustration for this character. I would ask, why has this guy got wings on his head? Why does it look like he's diving off of a diving board or standing and then putting his two arms out directly in front of him and like flexing his shoulder muscles as hard as he can? Ugh. It looks very strange, and there's not a whole lot of stuff within this cover that's really giving us a lot of information about who this character is, what's going on within this issue, what the stakes are, or giving us any kind of insight or teaser into what it is we might find on the inside besides this guy who poses really funny or is diving off a diving board. Please use the background and the environment to your advantage within this project on the cover and within the inside spreads to help tell your audience as much as possible about what's going to be happening within your piece. So, Mind Your Monsters. This is another children's book, and you guys are not required to use a comic book style page, but it does need to be sequential art. So if you want it to be a square format, you're welcome to do that, like it's a Zine or a children's book or something. Or if there's another, if you want to make it, I found one, I had one X-Men comic one time that was done in all watercolors in this really cool style. And it was it was long ways. And it was really, really cool what they were able to do with that particular format. If you want to, you're welcome to, but I would recommend just going with a standard kind of comic book cover. That's what I'm going to be doing as the example. Now, within this Mind Your Monsters illustration here, we've got really, really good art direction, good color schemes that are going on. We've got the reds and the purples that are being celebrated within the monster that goes into the logo. The logo is handled exceptionally well with the M and the S turning into tentacles from the monster. More realistic design on the buildings down here, but still stylized in their rendering style with smart color choices. So we've got the reds, the blues, and the yellows that are all coming together. And then between these two characters, even though they're standing back and forth to one another, we've got a really strong pose that's happening. That's giving you a good indication of how these characters feel about this big monster that's in front of them. Now, that brings me into something else. And to contrast it with Captain America over here, he is his pose isn't really telling us a lot about how we should feel about him. It's not a very strong pose. Within these scenes, please make sure that you're using everything at your disposal on the cover and within the comic spread to tell us who these characters are, right? To tell us as much as you can about them. Um, one of these gals ain't like the other one. She's having a bad day, but we're using the expressions from the characters. They should be, I guess, wearing eclipse glasses, but maybe it's diffused by the branches that they're underneath. Anywho, but yeah, we're trying to do a lot through their outfits and their clothing and all the other items that are happening on the picnic table, on the picnic blanket, to be able to tell a greater story about what they've been doing throughout this day. So you can see the little tarot cards down here, crystals, they got the incense, all the stuff that they've been burning. They've got their Ouija board over here, some kind of spell book or something like that. And yeah, other little things where they're having a seance or something on this day. That's what I'm talking about, using the environment, even on the cover, to be able to really tell the story. Here's another great example of using the environment and telling a story between the two characters for the cover art. Here we have an old school Astro Boy. I'll be honest with you, I had a really hard time if you come from a manga background, or if you favor, they're out, manga magazines are outselling American comic books by the boatloads nowadays. And when I was doing my research for this project and trying to find some good examples of anime covers that tell a story within the cover art, I found that really, really difficult to be able to do. The vast majority of them have got the characters just standing there with some kind of graphic-y design background, and the characters are just standing there in like an action pose or looking all cool, about the same as Captain America visually. This one, on the other hand, does a great job of using color theory. You can see how the colors from the girl's outfit are reused within the logo. Just within one image, we're seeing Astro Boy literally open up his heart, trying to save this downed character. We don't really know too much about who she is, but we get a sense of the environment from the background as well, even though it's in a sepia tone. But it's futuristic and it matches the shape language that's going on within the characters within the foreground as well, and it's still rendered very nicely, even though it's stylized. Pretty successful. It's a really, really good cover. But it's giving us some kind of sneak peek as to what the stakes might be. Look at some other ones. So that's what I'm looking for here, you guys. It's one thing just to have the character standing with their back to an environment. You can only get away with that within your portfolio so many times. At some point, you got to go in and tell the narrative story here. So the old Western magazines. Here it is, a fella, scouting and looking over down on an encampment. Maybe it's bandits. Who knows what it is that he's going after? But it's a really, really nice composition that brings the viewer in and gives you an idea of what the stakes are inside of this particular issue. And that's kind of the entire concept here, is that you're giving a teaser at the beginning, and then within the comic spread, you're giving sort of the big moment within the story, or a key moment is usually what these two-page spreads are used to be able to do. We're going to look at more examples of spreads in just a moment, but it's a key moment, a big moment, and we're not doing an entire comic by any means, but it's enough to be able to pique someone's interest with these two images and hopefully get them more interested or asking questions about what the idea is, or if you were to do more with it. So here's another one. We got some Moby Dick here, illustrated classics, and there we go. Ahab on his way to Moby Dick with his harpoon, big whale in the background. Sort of a very stoic crew there, but still excellently rendered. And I would call this a pretty successful cover as well. So if I had no idea who Moby Dick is, I would at least know that this book is about somebody trying to go after a whale. And that whale, look at that eyebrow on the whale. He looks super menacing. He is not a happy camper, and they're trying to stand up to him and going right at him. Again, great color theory. We've got almost a monochromatic background with the blues and the teals there. Also using cool grays that match with the sky. Good sense of highlighting going on. And then we've got the pops of color, the use of red throughout the characters' outfits that's echoed within the red text. And we've talked about in the previous project to give that text some treatment. Don't just let it be out of the box text. Let's look at another bad example. Here we go. X-Force. Among us walks the juggernaut. He's not walking, but if I had no idea who X-Force is, I didn't know who Juggernaut or Spider-Man or any of these characters were, I would have a really hard time understanding the conflict that's going on here. Why are these characters beating up on this big guy? What did he do wrong? You don't really know. And if you're going to do any kind of action scene, I would at least, I want to ask you guys to please make sure that you give some kind of justification for why, within the scene or the environment, for why these characters are in conflict, what has led them to this moment. How can you tell the story that's led up to this moment? With the characters, with their poses, with things that they're holding in their hands. If the Juggernaut had a giant sack of money and dollar bills are flying everywhere, we could get the idea that he just robbed a bank or something, and that would explain why the heroes are trying to stop him. Maybe a little bit more, but this cover, though it's a great drawing of the Juggernaut and great action poses on the characters, if I'm not familiar with who these people are, then it's going to be really difficult for me to be able to first time viewer pick this out and decide to spend my money on something like this. Okay. Hope that is starting to make a little bit of sense to you guys. So let's switch it over and start looking at some of the comic spreads. Where to begin here? I've got really good examples within this group. We've been working a lot in black and white. Oh, wait, sorry. One more potential cover. That's really nice here. I think that this one, a lot of the pulp art stuff can be really strong. But here we've got a very clear narrative structure that's going on within this scene. We've got the police that are coming for this guy. He's got the numbers on him like he just escaped from jail. His head has been bandaged. He's having a really, really bad day, and not as bad as her. But we can see within the background as well a lot of really great color theory that's going on here. I don't think if you're not looking at references, please look at references when you're doing this. That you are going to come up with a color scheme where it is this sort of buttery green yellow mixed with this teal for the background, and then deciding to do the police officers all in one color. But visually, it works really, really well. The yellow matches with the excuse me, the outfit on the gal, and creates some nice synergy that's going on there. We've got the red on her lips, really great facial expressions that are happening as well. Please do not, you know, if you come from an anime or manga background, you might be really great at making your characters look cool and stoic, but push those character expressions up here within these scenes. That's going to be something that's going to be really, really important for you and how you are making them act with their body language as well. This is electronic illustration, so we're using all the tools within our design and illustration toolkit to be able to take the story and turn it up to 11. Speaking of, here is a really, really impactful spread. You can have dialogue boxes. You're not required to have dialogue boxes, but if you're not going to have dialogue boxes, we got to make sure that the images plural for the spread that you're creating are compelling enough to really help the viewer understand what is going on. So here is Attack on Titan, and even if I have no idea what Attack on Titan is all about, this is a crazy cool spread that's going on here. So the entire image, we get a great sense of scale of how large the Titans actually are as they burst through the tree line. They're coming up on the village. The villagers are fleeing. You can see the dude carrying his old grandma out of the way. They're all looking nervous. Really, really strong expressions. We got tears going on. And then we've got some people that are praying to the Titans as well. And I love this juxtaposition between the absolute scale of these characters. The sun and the sky behind them is all rendered beautifully. And then on the right-hand side, you just get one panel of this just completely impassive, Titan looking down as if he's looking at a little ant. And it's that type of neat insight that's really going to make these panels sing. It's also beautifully rendered and a great composition with the way that they're leading the viewer's eyes through the entire piece. There's a lot of cool visual lines that they've created here. To draw us in, and this is just a super, super successful illustration. That's master level right there. Okay. There's another cool one that's a little bit older. I like this one a lot to be able to show you guys. So when it comes to action sequences, I was talking just a moment ago about please being sure to justify why that action is taking place within the scene. So here we have a big spread of, once again, Captain America, who is fighting in a graveyard. All these guys are trying to shoot him in a graveyard, and we get the idea why the hero is breaking into the graveyard and why he's trying to stop these characters because they are robbing graves. They are absolutely up to no good. We've got Nick Fury and the Vision in their caskets that are being pulled up out of the ground, and Captain America is there to stop that. And I think that this is really, really nice with the way that they've used the tree on the right-hand side to pull the viewer's attention over to Captain America. They're using the bike to point us back down into the guns. The guns are all aimed at him, of course, but you can see all the really strong dynamic poses on the henchmen as well as they are thrown and tossed and shooting their weapons. Especially that henchman that's closest to the tree with his hand on the gravestone. That hand on the gravestone is such a nice, naturalistic looking element in there. And that's what we're looking for here is bringing this story to life and freezing the moment. Really, really nicely done. And once again, a good color system that's going on here and good rhythm, good line work, good poses. Love this one. This is from Alex Ross, and it's totally blurry, but this is a classic one. And when he came out with this, I think, God, it had to have been 20 years ago at this point now, but it is such an incredible insight, right? So oftentimes we want to frame the characters that are in the middle of the action, but this, like we've been talking about with various other projects and other examples throughout this series, is by pulling it on the inside of the building, we make it more personal, and we, even though the characters are up high and in a sky rise, we're still getting to see the human reaction at the same time to the fiasco that's going on outside of their window, and they're all backing up and running away, and absolutely losing it with Green Goblin and Spider-Man having their exchange. Really, really great color theory here. Nothing strange to talk about with this. I just want to make you aware. Look for the alternative ways that you can tell the story. When you draw this out the first time, and we'll see that when we get to my example that I'm going to share with you guys tonight of where I'm heading with this. There might be an alternative angle, vantage point, different way that you can look at that first idea that you're trying to communicate. And by moving the camera, setting it back, looking at it from a different perspective, someone else's perspective, the story can become more compelling and the overall composition more interesting. Oh, this one's cool. One more Captain America. We just keep on coming back to Captain America here. So, love this one. This is a Captain America and Daredevil. And for a spread, I think it's done really, really nicely. We've got a great shot here, a great key shot of Captain America. Looks like he's taken one of, oh, they've swapped items. So Daredevil's got Captain's shield and Captain's got Daredevil's batons that he uses. And where this is visually is really, really interesting as we're looking down on the city and leads to a great 1-2 of Daredevil just flipping off and saying goodbye. And we're going to see a close up of Captain America's reaction. Um, I haven't seen the rest of this book, but I love the use of the confetti and the air for giving a time and space to when this is going on and what else might be happening within this shot. But yeah, this is a really cool, unusual camera angle to be able to tell the story within the scene. And the rendering on both the characters is just top notch. Love this shot and all the texture that's going on within Captain America's back, as well as the rendering and unique line work that's happening on his head that's reminiscent of our own line art project. And yeah, deciding what needs to be in focus and how to be able to get the viewer's attention on the stuff you want them to pay attention to and look at. This one's really nice as well for a comic spread. All right. So, what is happening here? So, you got mean, angry master sucking in some smoke. This guy, oh, it's got the incense. This dude steps up to him and whispers something in his ear that he doesn't like. And within just a second, all of a sudden, this guy's eyes roll back in the back of his head. And then we get the reactionary shot with the other ninjas picking him and carrying him off. And he has used his sword to be able to stab that guy. So it's a really good small sequence of events. That's something to keep in mind as well, is to understand what the scope is, the narrative that you can talk about within this comic spread. And it works very well to be able to go from action to reaction, or to sort of reveal one big thing like I did within my example, where we're introducing two different moments that are occurring. So we've got the meteor that's coming down, that's happening. We're making it nice and personal with these super close-ups. We see her raising up. So this is the action, right? That's occurring, the reaction, and then the explosion at the very end. So we're seeing each person's reaction to the action as the scene unfolds and takes place. It's a really smart way to be able to think about doing these, instead of trying to tell too big of a story on the page and it gets muddled and swamped. You're not going to tell the entire history of a planet or 3,000 years of some Dungeons and Dragons character homebrew that you came up with on this comic page. It just needs to be a simple story. So here is Darkwing Duck, and man, this is a really strong drawing. So it's got great line art to it. It's got nice, clean shading and polish that's going on here. Great character expressions that are occurring. You can see how we're using the environment to be able to tell the story of the city. So we've got his jet. I forgot all about his jet in the background there, and then really nice line coming all the way through the shot. And this fella over on the right hand side, who is I guess he's got a coffee. I don't know why he's got a Starbucks there. I'm not sure what's going on, but either way, it is a really good scene, city scene at night. Probably could tell a little bit more about why these guys are actually fighting with one another, but it is a great dynamic pose for a character like Darkwing Duck, that they're utilizing the cape, and you can see the blast going right through his cape right there, which is a really nice thing. I think he had like a gas gun or something in the show. I can't recall. Switching back over to the covers for a second. So I want to be able to be sure to show you guys this as well. So here is one for Lord of the Flies. And if you don't know anything about Lord of the Flies, this is not superheroes running around in tights, but this is a really compelling image here. It tells us a lot within this more graphical approach to the cover, which is totally fine because it's still narrative, right? We get one of the key moments from the book. We get that it's set inside of a jungle. You get an airplane there inside of the pig's eye, and it is just a remarkable cover. That if you come up with something like that, you're doing great for this project for the cover for sure. Um, yeah, I think there's a couple more examples in here. I want to keep on looking at these. Um, great color theory, and do your research, right? Look up online other comic book spreads, get a feeling for what their layout structure is. If you haven't done a whole lot of sequential art before, understanding how to be able to balance the different panels between the two spreads, just a quick search for comic book. Two-page spread is going to help you an awful lot understanding where your panels can go, what the panel layout can look like. If you're doing something like Todd McFarlane's Spawn or referencing that at all, his layout structure for his pages becomes very, very crazy at times. This is quite a bit more traditional. So it looks like Wolverine has been shot. We've got Captain America over the body trying to get him back to life. He's really upset. She looks exhausted. Puts his head on his chest, and then he's still got some kind of antidote or something that he needs to get somewhere. So he's got to continue on with his mission. But really, really nice lines of action going on through each and every one of these panels. They're composed exceptionally well. We're using alternative shots. So with the head on the chest, the drawings of the face are done really, really nicely. Got a down angle shot here, a side view shot where we can still see his face. She's framed up in the background very nicely. We're using the cracks within this one hallway and really exploring the space in a very strong way. I don't recommend trying to do like a globe trotting type of thing with just this comic spread. Usually, they're most of them are going to work best within just one setting. So here we go. This is almost exactly the same as what we saw for the Captain America one just a second ago. We've got our big spread here of our hero coming in to try and maybe he's breaking free. Nope, he's just coming in to save the day. I guess he's looking from up. Yeah, so we're sort of foreshadowing with the overhead shots from here and from here. And then all of a sudden he drops down and we can kind of see those action lines going on him to try and rescue the prisoners. But really, really cool color choices. Again, if I'm not looking at references, this isn't something I would ever come up with to have a pink sky and two different suns, and the way that they've kind of handled the bushwork here is really, really expressive with the line work. All looks really, really nice. And again, some alternative camera angles. This is very similar to Captain America holding up the vial just within that last scene that we saw with the character right behind it. So we can see two different expressions at once. And I want you guys really to become stewards and students of the history of comic book covers and spreads and to be able to understand what works, what doesn't work. So here's one more. We got Mr. Deadpool, Bad Blood. If I had no idea who Deadpool is, he's such a compelling, amazing character. And they've done a lot of really wild stuff with him. However, this cover doesn't really eat. It doesn't really help me understand who Deadpool or Wade Wilson is. And in any kind of environment here, we do a lot more to be able to understand why it is that he's shooting, jumping, sitting. I don't really know what's going on with him there, but the environment and the background on this cover is going to be helpful for you. Okay, I think that's going to run through all the examples there. Let's get into it. So I believe within the module overview here, you've got the sizes. You can also do a screen cap of this. 17 for the printable scale, 11.25 for the height. And you're just going to want to, use your ruler and put a center line in here for one. Please make sure that these are set to 150 DPI. Don't do them at 72 DPI. You're going to need that extra pixel depth here to really be able to make these colors and the gradients and everything that you're going to be rendering pop. If you haven't done a whole lot of stuff like this, again, I would recommend that you seriously look at other people's layouts and references and how it is that they're handling them, how they're making their marks, how they're making their shading. This is a really, really cool spread as well with an alternative angle. Notice the extra details that the artist knows it's important to take the time and include the tread on the bottom of the sneaker. And then we're also including the details of the ceiling up above this volleyball net that he's about to jump up into. And yeah, just a really, really cool image that they've been able to create with the oversized wings on the bird, and then this character just about to absolutely fly. Yeah, there it is. Reaction shot from the crowd from a third party. He's flying. Really neat take. Okay, cool. So I've got my two pages already set up within Photoshop here. I'm using gray backgrounds, and I like the gray backgrounds because it's not going to burn my eyeballs out. And let's go ahead and let's look at what my idea is going to be for this project. Just got done sketching these later to earlier today. Just drag it and drop it in here. And I'll tell you what I've got going on. So this can get nice and big. That's okay. So this is my first concept for the spread, and it's a little bit complicated, but I think it's going to work. Make it nice and large, and then we'll go back to those other images here in just a moment. All right, so there's some pushing and pulling that needs to happen from my initial sketch, but that's okay. So this is the way the two pages are going to be laid out and what I want to do with them. So what it is, it's two characters that are meeting one another for the first time. One of the characters knows a lot more about what is going on in this very bizarre situation than the other one does. During the pandemic, I had a friend of mine who was going to school for programming, and he came to me and he said, "Will, I want to make a video game, man. I want to make some kind of mobile app that we can sell." And this is one of those buddies who has always got, some kind of get rich quick theme scheme where it always ends up being you who's doing the majority of the work, and he never quite seems to stick with any of these ideas long enough to ever see any of them really come to fruition. I told him, I was like, all right, I don't think you realize how much time it takes to be able to make a video game and how much money is involved. I love it that you want to make something. Why don't we make something on a very small scale at first? So I recommended to him that he programs a sort of choose your own adventure graphic novel. And I've seen a couple of these games, and I really got into them that you can download. Like there's one called the Evertree Inn, and it's just text based. It's got some illustrations here and there, and it's got like a whole stat system to it where you can level up your characters within these text based adventures. And And I thought it'd be really cool to do something around a fun sci-fi concept. I don't have a good name for it. Maybe someone can help me think up something, but all I had at the time was Bluestone. And the idea is that whenever you touch this blue stone and you're holding it in your hand, then you are able to connect with anyone else throughout all of history who has ever actually held that blue stone at the same time. Any other living creature that's held the blue stone, you can connect and you can communicate with them in that time and space. So it sort of creates like a singularity event. And that's what's going on here. The concept that we came up with was that it's like post-Vietnam War. This vet has developed himself a nasty little drinking habit, and one night he accidentally falls, a hole gets broken in his wall, and the blue stone is revealed. And when he touches it, suddenly his world gets turned upside down, and all kinds of his world gets a lot bigger, and antics ensue. And so that's what's going on here is he is just discovering the blue stone. We're not really showing how that hole has been created or anything like that. We're just showing the moment leading up to it and what is the result of him touching this mysterious artifact for the first time. And so we've got two different timelines that are going on here. We've got a 1920s, I guess she's a flapper or a gal at a speakeasy who's drinking her martini. Suddenly, her necklace, the blue stone, starts to glow, and she knows exactly what is going on here and what's about to happen. And he has no idea. So suddenly, as he starts to pick it up, and he's like, "What the heck is this thing?" She is materializing behind him, and she starts strolling up. She's leaving her chair at the table, and then suddenly she taps him on the shoulder. He turns around and he is absolutely spooked. So we get a reaction shot. She leans in. She's full of 1920s pizzazz and charisma, and he is not in the best spot in his life right now. So she's going to tell him a little bit more about it. And as she starts to stand up, we reveal within the last frame that there is a whole line of different people that he now has access to throughout time that have also touched this blue stone that he can kind of jump through the line and talk to any one of them. And visually, the way that I'm showing that is right around him within this little circle. We've got the space that he lives, and then within each one of them, they've got their own little bubble or their own little ring that changes the environment that he's seeing as well. And so we're seeing those rings through time. I think it's a pretty cool concept. And you can see just within a couple frames, we sort of set up the stakes. We've got the reaction to the action, and then we're opening the world up with sort of a big reveal at the very end of this thing. So there's a nice build to the moment that's going on. We're seeing these two characters from very different environments. Probably likely will have different color schemes, like one in warmer colors and one in more blue tones, and their worlds kind of colliding. Yeah, that's the idea for where I want to go with this. Now, I've set it up, and from this initial sketch and figuring out how I could tell the story sequentially in a unique way, my first ideas here are not going to be my best idea. This is me just hashing out what's being shown within each one of these panels. What is the sequence of events? And I'm doing an awful lot of thought. And this is a starter pack. It's not the going to be what the final frames look like. So let's get back to my shot. So from there, I'm going to start going in, and at first I started thinking about what the cover could look like for this thing is where I started drawing first. And so there's our flapper lady in this first drawing of these two characters gave me a good idea of what I want them to look like. Right. So he's doing some renovation on his house within this shot. Suddenly he's surprised because she's just bending over and kind of excuse me, sir, tapping his shoulder. And then we see the line of people from different eras and different wardrobes behind them as it moves back in time. But then I came up with this idea. I thought maybe this will look a little bit more interesting for the cover with him reaching out and just about to touch the blue stone and her and the line of people just starting to materialize coming in through this little hole in the wall. That's a pretty good shot as well. Still pretty confusing, but I think it teases some kind of supernatural thing that might be occurring, and we can show the stone glowing on the character's hand. But then I really liked this last one here, and there's still, if I do this one, will be some movement, but it gets more to the point. So if we have the title up here at the top that says Blue Stone, and suddenly he's holding the blue stone, it's glowing, and then we see someone starting to appear, materialize behind him. Um, I think that that gives, if you're just seeing this on a comic book shelf or seeing this cover for the first time, it helps you connect the title with the what's going on with the characters and understanding that there's some kind of mysterious element here. It's a nice little teaser without being too literal. This is something that I want to tell within the story. This is still trying to kind of say too much with the cover. It's a good drawing, it's a good illustration, and I like the character poses for the most part. Um, but this one I think is the most compelling for cover art. So what I did next was, and this is what I'll continue doing, is refining my drawings. So within these first three shots here, she's sort of looking back over her shoulder, establishing the time and place, and we've got everyone dancing on the dance floor. She's at the table. She's got her little pack of cigarettes and her cigarettes lit. Then we got a random shot of her taking a sip out of her martini, and then suddenly the stone starts to glow. It's not the best sequence of events, so I've redrawn this to where it leads with her sort of looking down and noticing that it's starting to glow, and then suddenly she changes her pose and she gets really kind of mercurial. Good on me for not stumbling over that word. Um, and I'm trying to think through the facial expressions, the body language that's going on. Um, and suddenly, she's standing up and walking away from the table, and she knows that she's going to go find someone who's going to be a learning about this blue stone for the very first time. And so she's taking a nice drag, not nice, but a drag of her cigarette and just sort of oh, here we go. Here's another one, type of thing. That's going on there. So I think that this is a much stronger series of three different panels, and I hope that gives you some insight into how you might have your first idea and it can work, but there's likely a better way if you take some time to redraw it and slow down after you get that first kind of initial concept out and design thinking. Again, it took me three tries with the cover to come up with to sort of distill the idea down into what I wanted it to be, and then from here for something as complex as the comic book cover, or sorry, the spread, going through and really trying to take it panel by panel to discover what is going to be the best pose. So same thing is happening here. Bring our shot over. And this particular shot, it's okay. It puts the blue stone in there in a nice way, but we've got a lot of negative space on the gutters of each one of these frames. Where I wasn't really too happy with the angle or the pose that's going on with the character, and so I redrew it to show him sort of leaning over. And I think that this is going to work quite a bit better. We can still change the scale of some of these things, but this is a much stronger pose and facial expression for him as he's reaching into this giant hole that he's created within his kitchen. I keep imagining it being the kitchen, and showing him reaching out for the blue stone. It's also a much stronger draw on the character's hand as well. And I like the idea of creating a little bit of synergy here, where she's got her pack of Lucky Strikes or whatever cigarettes on the table, and her lighter as well. And we start to see those same two items and like a torn up old piece of paper, some kind of note that she's written um, in the wall as well. And then we're going to see those two items on the table here in front of her within each one of these shots, just so there's a little bit of synergy or a little pop of red there that brings that over and helps to be able to connect to connect the two moments. So that is sort of my design thinking on where I'm at within this shot right now, and how I'm starting to develop this out. It doesn't just start with me doing a sketch. I think within this one, yeah, I've got my sketch of the last scene, which is okay. I mean, I got there pretty quick. A lot of things still changed as I got towards the final drawing here, but this is setting me up to be able to get a pretty good story that I'm telling, and then I've also got my cover that we're going to be figuring out as well, which is just going to be this close up of the character and her starting to materialize. I think it's a little bit mysterious, doesn't quite give too much away too soon, and is leading the viewer in a pretty interesting and unique way. So there we go. Hope that's given you guys a lot of things to think about as you approach the design for this next project. And yeah, we're gonna look more into this later on. But that's it for now. Thanks for checking this out.